Hi, Dr. P here to talk at considerable length about something that some people may not understand. Two big reasons for all the game preference arguments, especially in video games. I'm talking about people who argue incessantly and interminably about what games are best, what video game platforms are best, and so on. Now, the usual caveat, this is designed for listening, not viewing. I use wordy slides for those who can't hear well or for whom English is a second language. The basic two reasons are, first, contemporaries have a strong need to validate their preferences. In other words, see that others have the same preferences, to the point of trying to persuade those who don't. Sometimes quite vehemently. The second reason is that lots of people confuse having an opinion with being right. They fail to recognize that some opinions are much more valid or worth listening to than others. This is a common problem with incoming college students. So first, validation. There seem to be a lot more people nowadays who are not secure in their preferences, who need their likes to be validated by others. So those who don't share their opinions somehow invalidate them, and that's the root of all the attacks. Now I'm going to quote extensively here from Tom Sorensen, who I entirely agree with. He's a sports columnist for Charlotte newspaper and has encountered this kind of thing a great deal. So he calls it "stop liking what I don't like" syndrome. Quote, people are more in need of validation than in the past. If someone else likes something else or doesn't like what they like, they fail in their validation. So they try to convince others to like what they like. Dumb. He continues, can you imagine liking a thing because you think you're supposed to? As in, I love hockey, so if you don't love hockey, there's something wrong with you. Unquote. And yet, this is what many people do, especially in games. They try to get others to think their way because they're offended when somebody doesn't think their way. And that results in interminable arguments. Now, people with true self-esteem don't care what someone else's opinion may be. If they like something, they like it. Period. Lack of self-esteem is the root of much of this, and the efforts in kindergarten to 12th grade education to manufacture self-esteem in the absence of accomplishment have failed dismally, having the opposite effect. So we have kids in K-12 who need more hand-holding than ever and expect to be told exactly what to do because their self-esteem is low. Sorensen says, some people need others to like what they like, thus evangelists. But I've never understood why. It feels weak to me. Unquote. And I have to agree, it feels weak to me. Well, I dislike Euro-style games, and I can explain thoroughly and cogently why. Yet even when I do, there are people who persistently say, if you just played whatever it is they like, you'd like them. They actually get offended when I don't like the game that they like. And it's pretty ridiculous because at my age and level of expertise, I'd be in terrible shape if I couldn't figure out what I like without necessarily playing it. Now, the second problem is people who think they're experts with absolutely nothing to back them up. So many things nowadays are skills of the mind, and you can't see what's happening in people's minds. And so a lot of people tend to discount that. It's not like watching a potter making pottery or a painter painting something. You can see that. Although a lot of that is in the mind too. So we have lots of people who are, for example, convinced that Arsene Wenger, who's been the Arsenal Football Club manager for 20 plus years and who has been very successful, doesn't know what he's doing. And somehow they do, though they've never been near a professional locker room or a practice. This makes no sense at all, does it? And yet it's very common. This is called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and I'm going to quote extensively from Wikipedia. A cognitive bias wherein persons of low ability suffer from illusory superiority, mistakenly assessing their cognitive ability as greater than it is. The cognitive bias of illusory superiority derives from the metacognitive inability of low ability persons to recognize their own ineptitude. Without the self-awareness of metacognition, low-ability people cannot objectively evaluate their actual competence or incompetence. So we have lots of people who confuse having an opinion with being right. And I'm going to quote now from Arsene Wenger, that manager, Arsenal manager. We live in a society of opinions. People are better informed today. Many of them are even better informed than I am. Everyone is entitled to an opinion, but it does not necessarily mean they are right. The easiest thing to do is have opinions. So in games, we have many younger people who feel that they need others to validate their likes and even campaign in favor of unpublished upcoming games that they think they'll like. And they campaign against what they don't like or against anyone who doesn't like what they like. Hence the hype increases. Now older people and generations before millennials, I think, tend to have more belief in their own preferences and they don't feel a need to campaign for them or against the contrary. They've also tended to learn how much time they can waste wrangling about game and platform preferences and never getting anywhere. Now this quote is from Patrick Barclay. Given the choice of something to uninvent, I'd go for Twitter. Its rise has coincided with a belief among the amateur that his or her opinion can be proffered with the authority of an experienced professional. Or even more, as in the "you don't know what you're doing" chants directed at Arsene Wenger by Arsenal supporters. I used to be a college teacher. I'm retired, and this is a big problem for college university instructors. Many teens come to a stage in their thinking where they believe their opinion is just as good as anybody else's. This usually happens after they figure out that they can't rely on just one authority. Now, of course, some people never figure that out, and their one authority may be religion, or their one authority may be a charismatic individual, a politician, for example. College teachers have to deal with people regularly who think that one opinion is just as good as another, and that makes teaching pretty difficult. So the teachers have to show or teach these people why, quote, opinions are like buttholes, everyone's got one, and most of them stink, unquote. They have to be taught the difference between a typical opinion and an informed opinion, that is, one based on facts and experiences. To quote Wikipedia again, the corollary to the Dunning-Kruger effect indicates that persons of high ability tend to underestimate their relative competence and erroneously assume that tasks that are easy for them to perform also are easy for other people to perform. This is one reason why star athletes may not make the best coaches, because they assume things are easier for other people as they were for them when they played. None of this helps in the arguments, of course, when somebody who actually has the high level of expertise becomes involved. Now throw in the greater internet fuckwad theory, which is online plus anonymity plus audience equals fuckwad. In other words, ordinary people, given anonymity and an online audience, turn into fuckwads sometimes. They do or say things they'd never do or say in person. And you see this all the time. And this is the reason why I don't do things anonymously online. I use an obvious handle and always the same one, Lou Pulse. Now, game designers, when you're really an expert, and I hope you will be an expert in some respects anyway, do you want to argue, probably fruitlessly, with people of low self-esteem or with people of low ability? That's why some say don't read the comments. Don't waste your time. Thanks for listening.